All right. Well, welcome everybody. We are so glad you are here for today. Just a few announcements. We have as always, our live Q&A podcast that is coming up. Those are on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific. You can go to our calendar to see always when the next one is. We do those once a month, and so that you can actually come onto the podcast and ask us any sort of Reiki questions. So we always have a really great discussion around there. We have people that, experienced Reiki practitioners, new Reiki practitioners, people that might just even be Reiki curious. Everybody is welcome. Also feel very comfortable that you can just even come in with your video off and just listen or ask your questions anonymously once you're on there live. Also, I actually don't think that we have a lot of classes coming up. Colleen has Karuna. So this will be published just before Karuna. So she has Karuna on the 9th, 10th, and 11th, right, Danny? Yeah. Okay. The 9th, 10th, and 11th. That's this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and there are still a few more spaces in there. If you would like to join, just go to ReikiLifestyle.com. And then I think we kind of took July light. We made July light for us, all of us at Reiki Lifestyle, so we can, have some summertime and just that self-care and that rest that is really important for everybody. But then let alone if, you're supporting a lot of people. So for everybody else out there, those times of self-care when you can do them, definitely encourage that. So July is a little light for us. We'll continue with the distance Reiki share. We'll continue with the podcasts. So just so you know, we're still here and any support that you need in that way. But we don't have classes again until August. So we'll have Animal Reiki 1 and 2 and Animal Reiki Master in August. So you can check out ReikiLifestyle.com for that. And then the only other announcements, I would say, check out our other social media. Colleen's at Reiki Lifestyle Official. I'm at Robyn Benelli Reiki Lifestyle. So you can catch more of us there. All right. I think that's it, right, Danny? Without classes, it's a bit of shorter announcements. All right. So last week, what we talked about were triggers and what to do when you are faced with triggers, which is, really great with the conversation that we were having before the recording started. So, that was a really great topic. I know it was really relevant for a lot of people. A lot of people had talked about and even left us comments on our YouTube that it was, for some reason, it was just a heightened week of that. And so a lot of people were kind of in that space. So, so if you want to go and check that out, it's on our YouTube channel and you can look up, triggers. It's last week's video. But then today, what we wanted to talk about is actually the opposite of that, which are glimmers. And so this is actually, I don't know if it's a new concept in general, or if it's just a new concept to me. I've kind of been seeing posts about it, hearing more talk about the idea of glimmers, just even in the last, I would say 3 to 4 months, where I've been seeing people talk about them more and more. They're probably an older concept than that. And for some reason, they're needing to come across my path around them, or my algorithms are just oh, she posted, pushed on a glimmer thing. I don't know. Either way, I needed to see them. So glimmers are just basically, they're the concept of the opposite of triggers. So what makes you feel hope? What makes you feel inspired? What gives you that sense of awe? What gives you that sense of safety? What gives you that, that sense of peace and calm? So that's essentially what we're talking about when we are talking about glimmers. And when I first saw this concept, kind of come across my, sphere, I was like, of course, that's such a beautiful concept, that there are these things that cause us to have that emotional reaction as well. And what's interesting about it is that when we're talking about Reiki specifically, this is one of the things that Reiki, as a fundamental part of its frequencies, do. So when we're talking about Reiki, we're healing layers, right? That's a really essential part of it. We're releasing layers, we're healing things from this lifetime, past lifetimes, ancestral history, all of those kinds of things. But we're also revealing. So we're revealing our authentic selves. We're revealing our empowered selves. We're revealing our healed selves. We're revealing, even if we're talking about from a very, physical perspective, we're revealing a less stressed self. Many of us go into it to receive stress reduction. Many of us go into it to kind of fill up our life force and vitality. So it's like you've got the releasing, but you also have that element of bringing in as well. And with Reiki energy, as a practitioner, you're receiving it as you're giving it, right? So it has this balance of both things within it, that it's not just about letting go. It's not just about releasing. It is also about that bringing in. I know for Colleen and I, when we talk and teach in our, our Next Step Reiki and 12 Heavens classes, our monthly, advanced Reiki training classes, that's one of the really big concepts that we talk about, is around the idea of, the healing's important. We're shifting the paradigm. The healing's really important. We have to do that healing work. At the same time, sometimes when we're in healing work, we forget to go into that revealed space. We forget to go into that fully empowered space. And when you're in that, you can get caught in the cycle of, okay, what's next to be healed? All right, I got to heal this next layer. I got to heal this next layer. And then you're just looking at all the time about like what needs to be healed. And finding things that need to be healed. And now that is really, really important. I'm not discounting the fact that it's really important, but what our most healed self is, our self that is from our most authentic truth. When we're living in our authentic self, when we're living in our empowered self, when we're living in our most healed self, it's our most revealed self. When we can hear our inner truth, when we can live our life authentically from a state of, I know it's not possible to be 100% in joy, but when we're in a state of love and compassion and joy more than we're in a state otherwise. So that there's this concept of noticing that piece of it. What are my gifts and talents? Who's my authentic self? How do I connect into that inner truth of me? How do I connect into that source of divine love that is within me? So this is why I loved the aspect, bringing it all the way back around. This is why I loved the idea of glimmers, because we do hear a lot about triggers. We do hear a lot about that side of things, and it's so important to know about. But what about the opposite of that? How do we notice, and how do we be in presence? Because that's, I think, one of the hardest things to stay in, is how do we be in presence when we do have these amazing, they don't even have to be like these amazing big experiences. They can just be small ones. How do you start noticing those small glimmers of light, of those small glimmers of where you feel safe, how you feel safe? It's not just like where a location, but like where you feel safe, where you feel hope, where you feel love. We all know that feeling of like, we all know that feeling even of when you're standing looking at a beautiful view, and it just makes you feel that heart connection, that makes you feel that space inside you where you feel calm, where you feel that kind of that sparkling joy that these things can create. It can be really small, little moments, especially if you're in a cycle where things are really hard. So when things are really hard, it's easy to say, notice these things, easy to say we can live in a space of joy and love and compassion and all of that when things are easy, right? That's an easy thing to say. It's when things are hard and you're in a hard cycle that it's harder to also notice these things. Notice that, oh wow, the moon looks really beautiful today. Notice like, oh, look at that, the coloring of that cloud. Oh, how I feel when my pet is sitting next to me and it brings me a little bit of comfort. Or, the times when we just want to give them little scrunchy faces because we just love them so much, like, oh, I just love you. Like those types of moments. When we feel maybe there's, a show on even that makes us feel just really content and calm. And I know for me, I get that feeling in the fall when Great British Baking Show comes on. For me, it's like, I know that sounds silly, but it's like, it's these little moments that help us to feel that hope, to feel that, kind of instead of that sympathetic nervous system really activated like it is in a trigger, where is it where we can feel kind of that deep breath feeling and our parasympathetic nervous system more activated in a glimmer. So it's about, first of all, it's about knowing what they are, right? This definition, this term, because I think the term really gives it, when you have that name for it and you feel it happening, it's like, oh, this is a glimmer that's happening right now. I'm loving this moment right now. Even if it's fleeting, I'm loving this feeling. I feel it inside. I notice it. And it's a glimmer. And so I can put a name to it. I can put it into kind of like a category, right? And then so it's about noticing it first. It's like knowing what it is. And then it's about recognizing the places that you feel that way. So do you feel that way in nature, or even if you're just in your backyard and you notice that, the tree looks really pretty? Is it that you feel that way maybe when you're out at a restaurant with a friend or a partner, or your kids, or even or by yourself, right? Ooh, I get to have a meal by myself. And so is it those times? So there's all different things that can create this feeling for us within, that helps us to cultivate within ourselves more self-love, more hope, more awe, more peace. So it's knowing what it is and then noticing when they happen for you and assigning it to that, right? Like I know for me, I drive by whenever I take my daughter to school. My husband takes her pretty much every day, but I join them sometimes, or I take her sometimes. And we drive by this just amazing viewpoint that we have down the street from our house. If you follow me on Instagram, you see it on my stories often enough. It overlooks just the river and this abyss, and then we've just got this big, huge, beautiful mountain in the background, because I live at the base of Mount Hood, which is a large mountain. It's 11,000 feet. And so every day when I drive by this, it's almost like it doesn't even matter what it looks like. It can be completely cloudy and the mountain can be covered, but there's this misty fog that kind of rolls up from the valley. It's very moody Oregon, like fir trees, and that I still love that view. Like it's beautiful no matter what. And I realized when I saw this post that talked about glimmers and what they are, I was like, oh, this is a glimmer. Every day that I get to drive by this, it inspires me. It makes me feel hopeful. I am like, oh my gosh, look at how beautiful this is and how grateful I am that I get to live here. It sends me into this gratitude practice. It connects me into nature because I connect with that mountain. I connect with that valley. I connect with all of that. And it brings me into this whole space and frame of reference and this whole space of mind when I drive by it. And so I was like, here's one of my glimmers. And I'm so grateful about this glimmer. And so noticing that, even if it's just in that moment, it maybe takes us 10 seconds to drive by this viewpoint. even just noticing it for that 10 seconds can change the way that I'm feeling, can change the way that I'm thinking, can move me into a different frame of reference, can move me into a different frame of mind in that moment. And so those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about, of like noticing that. And it starts to, when you start to notice and start that practice, because it's a practice of noticing these places that make you feel this way, right? They bring up these emotions within you. It's a practice to notice them more and more. It's a practice to notice the things that make you feel gratitude or make you feel that beauty that's within and all around. But then there's also the practice of holding that. So how do you be in presence with that? Because I do think that is one of the things that's harder for some reason, because of the way that we're wired with our human bodies, is that we can tend to hold on to the negative things like a trigger longer than we can hold on to a positive thing like a glimmer. And so it's like a trigger. I can, as we talked about last week, I can, argue in my head with somebody for days before I notice I'm even doing it, and be like, wait a second, I have to change this. I have to shift this. And yet with a glimmer, many times, even the shorter things, they just kind of last just in that moment. So how do I start to help myself to shift this, where I can hold, not necessarily in place of a trigger, because I think it's unrealistic to think that that's never going to happen. But why am I holding something that somebody said on social media that, like, I may or may not know that well on social media? And why am I allowing my brain and my body to hold that longer than this glimmer that I am seeing on every day? Both things are 10 seconds, right? And so I think that that's really where it comes down to, is really helping ourselves. And again, that practice of holding those glimmers. So noticing it, bringing Reiki in to connect with that divine source, that most healed self as well, that key, that life force that's within us, that spiritually guided element of it, bringing in Reiki, setting intentions to continue to notice them and continue to hold that practice longer when it does happen for you. So I notice this glimmer as I'm driving by this viewpoint, and it's 10 seconds. Okay, well, how do I hold in that space where I feel that beauty, that awe for a longer amount of time? How do I feel that when I'm going through the drop-off line? How do I feel that when I'm coming home and getting ready for work and going back into that kind of muscle memory of that glimmer? And I do think it's a little easier when we spend more time. Like if I'm out on a hike and it's hours, I'm going to be in that glimmer space for a bit longer than maybe just the 10 seconds. And then at the same time, if I can hold that trigger for that long, it also tells me that I can hold that glimmer for that long. And then at the same time, needing the and at the same time, knowing that it's a muscle memory, knowing that these things, just like our spiritual practices, just like our healing, just like our spiritual muscles, they take time to build. And that's okay. The Reiki energy also helps us with this. It can help us with that, even reframing, rewiring of our brain, and that noticing them is the first step. And even if you would like to write them down, okay, I know many of us have gratitude journals or practices and other journals. So yeah, also adding this, what were my glimmers today? And how do I spend time intentionally going deeper and deeper into what my glimmers are, glimmers that happened during the day, and how do I hold that space a little longer? I know when you're in a harder cycle that as I said before, that glimmers can be a little harder to see, or they're harder to hold. And that's okay too, to give yourself grace, give yourself compassion around that. And even if you can find something just for a moment in the day, driving by that viewpoint, even if I can notice my glimmer for that amount of time, and if I'm in a hard cycle, I'm in a really challenging time, that also is equally as valid and equally as important. And it's okay that, it's like not to put all this pressure on yourself to bypass the fact that you're in a challenging cycle, but it's okay that, your glimmer might just be a little bit just for that day. And then also to notice that, because that's so important for you and you deserve that glimmer, even in a challenging cycle. So that's kind of what we've been talking about this last week. It's always fun. I see your picture, Caroline. I love that was a glimmer. This was a whole conversation that we had last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Did that end up on the recording? Do we know if that was on the recording? No, I don't know. Sure. Sue would know, maybe. Danny, did you know?
I don't know.
Okay. Anyways, Caroline had put in the chat that she had just received this really beautiful message from your cousin, right? Is your cousin? Yeah, who had just passed when she was cooking and in her cooking, and just saying that was a glimmer for her. And that's really beautiful. I love that. So they can come from anywhere. They really can. And I just love that it's like a less orthodox way of seeing that, because like a beautiful viewpoint is one thing, right? But the fact that you're seeing this glimmer in the olive oil in your pan is just, I just love that. So that's that noticing. That's that noticing of what they are, what they mean to you, and what they are for you. And that can ebb and flow and change. It's not always going to be something in nature. It can be all sorts of things. So Danny, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Well, I was just kind of thinking, like, I get that glimmer when my house is cleaned. Like after I clean my house, I'm like, oh my gosh, it just feels so big and it's not closing in on me anymore. And I look outside, I'm like, I'm just so appreciative of everything. And so just even that, having a clean house.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great example, because it's so true. Yeah. Yeah. You feel that kind of safety.
Yeah. Or even a clean car. Like when you go through the car wash, you come out, you're like, ooh, a whole new beginning today.
After a shower, if you really need a shower. But that's such a perfect example, Danny. Like those are the small sparks of joy, small sparks of hope, and I know I've been in that place where things have been really, really challenging. Just even getting up and taking a shower is a big deal, and noticing that part of it, noticing how you feel after, just to see that small, light in that, and it makes you feel just that little bit of hope and that little bit of calm and safety. I know with a clean house, I feel cozy, Danny. It's like I love the fall. Spring's actually my favorite season, but I love the fall. And you light some candles, and I've got a clean house, and I've got some tea, and I'm watching the Great British Baking Show. That's like glimmer. I can go into that space in this moment and be like, that feels so good.
Well, I even get it like when I watch my cat cleaning itself, right? It's just like so methodical, and I just like, oh wow, I just can sit there and watch.
Oh, I love that. Oh, very wonderful. Yeah, dark chocolate. Agreed. I'm seeing everybody's in the chat, like all of their little glimmers. And this is what I love, everybody. This is so beautiful. Shower after the day on the beach. Like, I love this so much. Yeah. If you're watching on YouTube later, you guys should comment on, or you all should comment on what your glimmers are too. Because I'm loving these things of like, I never thought of that, I never thought of some of those things, but it's true. Like, oh, I totally relate to that. I can totally think of like, that is a glimmer. And I just love the idea that this whole chat and everybody in here is experiencing everybody else's glimmers and these positive things, these and what everybody is bringing, because you can feel like people's like, oh, it's kind of like their inner child, or this part of them when they feel good, like what makes them feel good. You can feel that in the energy of that in the chat, seeing all of this. So that's I love that everybody's doing that. It's a really neat idea.